Hello students, good morning and welcome to the subject of productions and operations management. We are dealing with unit number 4, that is process selection, and this is part 2. This is the content of the chapter. Process selection is the unit in which the manufacturer decides as to through which process he exactly wants to give out his output. That means he wants to give out his product, or it may be services, whatsoever may be, how he wants to proceed with the production, which process he wants to select, and how he wants to go forward as far as the pure production is concerned. That is the area of production or process selection, right? These are the content out of which we have already dealt with the introduction, and what is process, that is we have already dealt, and today will be in this section will be dealing with the functions and maybe the two aspects of process, right? Before starting to fresh things, let us just go through once with what we have done earlier in the first part so that we can relate it well. Alright, here we are introducing ourselves to production. If now anybody asks you that what is production process, then you must be knowing, or you must be clear that it is the such a kind of process through which we are trying to change the inputs into some kind of required outputs. It involves two things, that is the transforming resources and transformed resources. What is transforming resource? Then we can say that it includes all those things which we use to produce something. It may be building, it may be machineries, it may be computers, it may be any system that we may be using, it may be the people that carry out the transforming process. And the second aspect of the production process is the transformed resources, means they are all the raw materials and components that we use to produce the end products, right? So any production process involves a series of link in a production chain. That means one by one we carry out with one process, then the other, and then the other, stages wise. What happens at the end is that at the end we get the end product which are consumed by the customers or which are desired by the customers. And if we put more efforts in bringing up this product, then what happens is ultimately the customers are ready to pay high for the products that they desire. When we change this inputs into output through some kind of process, it is said to be the production process simply, right? Now what is a process? Here we'll be checking out the term process in a little detailed way, right? Now we all know that the process is a sequence of activities that is intended to achieve some results, typically to create added value for the customers. We all know this. That is a sequence of activity. That means one step, then the other one, and likewise. What we do at each stage, we try to add the value to the product, so that ultimately when then products are ready, it is the product that is required by the customers or demanded by the customers. Thus, a process converts input into outputs through a production system. It involves the use of so many types of resources and provides something of a value. And at the end, what is the purpose? Then we are providing some kind of product which has got its own value. No product can be made and no services provided without process, and no process can exist without a product or services. We all know that a product cannot be or services cannot be done or made or generated or created without any kind of process, and no process is required if we do not have to make any kind of product or generate any services. Thus, process is any part of an organization that take inputs and transforms into output. We know this, and the ultimate objective is to provide the maximum value to the customers, may it be a product or services. Whatever the end product may be, it should be such which should provide the greatest amount of satisfaction to the customers. They are ready to pay for it, and they have a high value for the product, right? That is what is the mission of any process. That is the ultimate objective of any process rather. Now, this production may involve many processes. See, if you are producing something, it is never this that with one single process only that can be done. There are multiple types of processes available, and this process selection is to be done by the manufacturer to see that whatever we want to produce with whatever available transforming and transformed resource that we have, the best we want to utilize, the maximum optimum utilization of everything that we have, we want to do it, and then we select such a kind of process which is cost effective also, and which gives the end product of the customer satisfaction, right? That is the purpose of any manufacturer, and for that purpose or to attain that objective, we are learning this section of process selection. There are also circumstances in which a single component may undergo two or more processes during its manufacturing cycle. Much possible that twice, thrice a component may be coming to the same type of process. It depends, right? After 1, 2, 3, third process, again you may have to bring that semi-finished product to first process, then again you may have to take it to the fourth process, and then again you may have to bring it to second process. This is very much obvious, or it may happen, but this depends, or when this depends, it depends on the process that you select. It depends on the way you want to produce the product. It depends on that. So forward tracking and back tracking of the product is, or semi-finished product is, much obvious. Now, it all depends on the process engineer as to how he selects the most appropriate and cost efficient type of process. That is what I told you, that everything depends that what type of process do you select and how do you want to take up your process through the product wants to go, or the raw material wants to go under how many stages, what are those stages, how many equipments, machineries are required, how many people may be required, what will be the most cost efficient way to produce it, what type of layout you will have to set up for it, what type of say location you want to have it, or what type of size or shape of the layout you will require. Everything depends on this process that you select. So it is ultimately the decision of process engineer as how he wants to select the most appropriate process, and that is why we are learning. This is a proper gradual learning through which we are trying to understand that what is process, why it is so important, and at the end what we'll be learning is that how many types of processes are available, how many options are available to a manufacturer, and then he decides. It cannot be a kind of random decision on the part of manufacturer. He decides on so many factors. We'll be learning ahead in the unit that there are so many factors which he needs to consider, and then at the end he decides that which process to select, right? So that is the way he takes up a decision on process. Now here what we are going to what we have done up till now was the refreshment, that what we have done in the previous lecture, that we have revised in brief, right? That what is the introduction, what is process selection as a chapter, and what is process that we have seen. If we have seen process, means it is a type of mechanism through which you are trying to convert inputs into outputs. This is the simple way to understand process, right? Now what type of functions are carried out under these different processes? See, all the processes cannot be categorized under single category. Then what we have done is we have tried to make it simple. We have categorized it into three types. That means processes can be any of the three types that we are doing it right now, right? And out of those three types, what type of metal or what type of material or maybe product that you are going to produce, depending upon that the process is being selected. Again, in the further part of the chapter, we'll see that if you want to produce something, say if it is a manufacturing process or maybe conversion process, then also there are options available through which the process can be further selected. But by now, or for now, what we are trying to say is that we are trying to understand the functions, that what type of processes are generally undertaken in a manufacturing industry. Basically, these things can be categorized under three different heads, that is conversion process, manufacturing process, and testing process. See, if you just try to understand it, just the names are self-explanatory. Suppose if we say conversion process, then what is conversion? Conversion means to convert something, right? So it is the process of converting the raw materials into finished products. For example, converting iron ore into iron and then maybe probably to steel. This conversion process can be metallurgical or chemical or manufacturing or construction processes. It depends. means the basic raw material we are trying to bring it to some kind of the product which can be used then, right? Otherwise in raw form everything is not possible to be used, we know this very well, right? So you have to bring it to some kind of that stage of that product wherein you can utilize it directly. So it is a conversion process, that is first category. Manufacturing process, that is second category. And testing process is to be the third category. Now if we are talking about the conversion process, now what is conversion process? I told you it is a self-explanatory word where it tells you converting. Conversion is converting, badalvu, feravu, right? What we are changing it into, that means we are changing the raw materials into the finished product, and that is what is the conversion process basically. Now this conversion can be done in many ways. It can be metallurgical, means if we are the example has been given, it is related to metals, right? When you are trying to change iron ore into iron and then further into steel, then that is metallurgical process, right? It may be chemical process, or it may be even a manufacturing or construction process. See, when you are there for a construction site, or when you visit a construction site of a half built building, at that time you must have noticed that the conversion process is going on. Still only the structure has been ready for the building, it is not the whole building that is ready. That means initially when you had been there, it was a plain land, then after it has changed to a structure, then after it changes into a perfect building, and then after amenities it comes to a perfect campus, or maybe the perfect society to live in, right? It is as simple as that. That means you are converting at each stage, you are making a kind of conversion process which makes the a previous product or semi-finished products better, or it tries to give a shape, a kind of perfect type of model to it, so that ultimately it can be used. So that is what is said to be conversion process. When we move on to the manufacturing process number 2, it can be categorized into say the following, that is forming process, machining process, all right, and the third one is assembly process. Let us see it. What is forming process? Forming process includes foundry processes to produce castings. See, during your projects, right, you may have undergone some kind of industry, or you have come across some kind of industries which are casting industries. Now what actually they do under casting? Casting is nothing but they try to change the shape of the raw material into the work piece, into such a kind of piece, without removing or adding anything to the material. That means ultimately you are trying to give the shape to it, right? You are casting it, you are giving a kind of shape to it, so that ultimately that shape can be used for any further processes. So that is what is known as manufacturing process, category number 1, forming process, or what we know it commonly is casting, right? Or foundry industry. So this foundry industry, neither they add anything to the raw material nor they remove, but at the end, with the help of heat, with the help of say a few types of what do we call it, shapes and stamping and forging, they are trying to bring up the workpiece in such a form which can be used, right? The next part comes up is machining process. What is machining process? Removing the unnecessary things, right? It is like giving a shape to the product by removing the extra things. Suppose if you are sharpening the pencil, then initially if you are getting a new pencil, then new pencil does not have its lead outside, right? What do? We sharpen it, means we remove the unnecessary shape there, and then we try to bring out the lead. Then that is said to be machining process. Same way, machining process in industry means it is a metal removing operation such as turning, milling, drilling, grinding, shaping, planing, boring, etc., through which you are trying to bring out something by removing the unnecessary things, and that is what is said to be machining process, right? If we move on to the third category of manufacturing, then it is assembly process. What does that involve? It involves joining of the components or joining of the subparts into the main product, right? For example, assembly process of welding, soldering, riveting, fastening with the bolts and nuts, and joining using adhesives. That means if you are trying to bring up, suppose, a chair, right? If you are manufacturing, or you are trying to bring up a chair, then what do? we try to get the wooden say framework for the sitting, the back part, maybe the stand on which the chair will be supporting itself, right? That comes up. Again, what comes up is we try to we use the adhesives means we try to use those kind of glues through which we are trying to join, we are trying to bolt it, we are trying to put the screws in it, so that ultimately the chair is ready. Then when we try to join the subcomponents together, that becomes more or less an assembly process. So what kind of three process manufacturing process we have seen? Forming, that means casting or giving the shapes, right? It's a kind of shaping of the material without adding or removing anything. Machining is removing unnecessary things to it. And at the end, what we have is assembly. Assembly means to bring the subcomponents together. We are suppose the best example is automotive industry. I gave you the example. Automobile industry is the best example of assembly industry. Means all the subcomponents, you are getting it together and then you are assembling it together, means to bring it together, and we give the whole, say it may be car, it may be a rickshaw, it may be a scooter. That means it's through assembly process that the whole product comes out at the end, after joining the components or maybe the subcomponents, right? The third in the category comes up is testing. Testing itself tells you it involves a kind of inspection process and it is a testing of the product. That means you are ultimately trying to test the product, you are trying to inspect it, you are trying to check it, that whether the product is proper or not. That is what is known as the testing product or maybe the testing process, right? So that is all about the processes that we have seen. See what we have done. I'll just try to make it clear one more time. We have done the functions, that if we say production process, then exactly what type of function we undergo, then we can say that we can categorize this process into three parts. It is conversion process basically, or manufacturing process, or testing process. Conversion means converting raw material into finished products. Manufacturing involves three things. If we say that it's I am running a manufacturing unit, then what type of manufacturing unit are you running? Then we may have three options before us, whether it is forming, that means casting, or foundry industry, right, wherein we are not adding anything to the raw materials, nor we are removing anything. Instead, we are giving the perfect shape in the form of workpiece, so that we can use it further for the process, right, or further for any of the industry. That is foundry industry or forming is the example. Casting industry is the example of forming process. Come to machining industry or machining process, where we are removing the unnecessary things like drilling, grinding, right, milling machines, boring machines, boring, etc. are said to be such kind of manufacturing process, which we name it as machining process. And the assembly means we are at the end, we are trying to assemble the subcomponents and we are trying to bring out the main product at the end. Testing is, it may be a simple inspection, or we are checking the quality of the product. We are trying to see that everything is according to the requirement. This is what is said to be the testing processes. So these are the three basic functions that are being carried out through the processes, right? We have just checked it one more time. Now what we are moving to is the second part of what is process. That means there are two aspects of process. We have seen what is process, we have seen the functions of process. Now what we are seeing are the two main aspects of process. Process can be divided into two main parts, not parts actually, but two main viewpoints are there. One is process planning, the other one is process selection. Again, the topics are such which are self-explanatory, but we have to see it quite in detail. So we need to understand this on a primary base, and then we move on to the detailed explanation. See, what is process? We know it is, process means a sequence of activities that turns raw material into finished products. That we know it very well. What are the different types of processes or functions of processes? Then we have seen there are three main types of functions that we have seen earlier. Right? It may be manufacturing, it may be conversion, or it may be testing processes, right? Now what we are trying to see is other aspect of process. That means what process is all about, what it is made up of. Then it is made up of two important aspects. One is process planning. Planning means beforehand we are designing something. Beforehand we are keeping things ready for us, and process selection is at the end we try to select from the various alternatives available. So the same thing has been explained, but with the detailed note there. Okay, when we are talking about process planning, let us try to understand first what is process planning, and then there are again further two parts. So we need to understand this. It is concerned with planning the conversion processes needed to convert the raw materials into finished products, and it consists of two parts. That means when we talk about process planning, it is divided into two. Planning means beforehand we are trying to pen it down, or we are trying to jot it down that what exactly the process is going to be all about, right? At that time we can divide this process planning into two parts. What are those two parts? One is process design, and the other one is operations design. Both are different from each other, so please do not mix it up. Okay, so process planning has two aspects. Process has two aspects: process planning, process selection. Again, process planning has some two things to understand, that is what is process design and what is operation design. Now when we talk about process design, what does that mean? Process itself is a bigger word, mind you, right? So it is concerned with the overall sequence of operations required to achieve the product specifications. It specifies the type of workstations to be used, the machines and equipments necessary to carry out the operations. The sequence of operations are determined by the various factors like nature of the product, the material used, the quantities to be produced, and the existing physical layout of the plant. That means process design is overall mapping of the process. It includes everything, whatever number of process may be divided into various operations. Suppose if a product is to be produced, it undergoes 5 different operations: operation 1, operation 2, 3, 4 and 5. Alright, that means the sub stages can be considered as operation. But when we are talking about process design, it involves the overall designing, means what type of operations, how many operations would be there, right? What type of machines, equipments will we require, what type of factors that we need to consider, what will be the nature of the product. So many things we need to consider, and then we design the process. As far as operation design is concerned, it is concerned with the design of the individual manufacturing operations, means at each stage what are we going to do, that is all about operations design, right? It examines the man-machine relationship in the manufacturing process. Operation design must specify how much labor and machine time is required to produce each unit of the product. That means operation tells you about the each stage. Suppose first stage may require 2 equipments and 4 people and maybe 30 minutes. Then this is what is said to be operation design. Operation number 2 suppose may require 3 machines and 6 people and 1 hour. That means this is the whole designing of that particular operation or that stage only, and that is a part of process planning. So process planning has two things in mind. One is process design, which is a wider term, and operation designing means in each process, whatever operations are, whatever sub process parts are, those are named as operation designs, right? Then the next main aspect comes up is, mind you, don't get confused here. When we are talking about two aspects of process, there are two aspects of process: process planning, process selection. When we come to process planning can be further divided as process design and operations design. We have seen process design is a bigger term, wider term. It includes everything related to the whole sequence of the manufacturing, whereas operation design tells you about the each stage and man and machine relationship, right? When we move on to the second major aspect, that is process selection, we are coming to the main area of our topic, main area of our chapter. It refers to the way the production of goods or services is organized. It is the basis for decisions regarding capacity planning, facilities layout, equipments, and design of work system. Process selection is necessary when a firm takes up the production of a new product or services to be offered to the customers. Means process selection is the way through which you are going to prepare something. it may be what type of say equipments that we are using, or what type of facilities that we may require, what type of equipments or work system which we require it, everything related to process. And then we select the ways. See, supposingly if we are making a cup of tea, which is prepared by me may be different, the way may be different, and the cup of tea produced or maybe made by you or your mom may be different, because the way you continue with the process may be different, and that is what which is very convenient to me, I am going to use it, right? So it's not this that only a cup of tea can be made with my system only, with my process only. That means in the same way, if a manufacturer wants to manufacture something, then there are alternatives available before him. There are so many ways he can produce it. Now it is up to him to decide that which way is most cost effective, which one is most suitable to him, most appropriate to him, and that is why it is a crucial decision of process selection. When he decides on some way of producing, some method of producing, that is what is considered to be process selection. Alright, now when he selects the process, he generally answers the following questions. Key decisional areas are there. Number one, it has to be decided that to what extent the firm wants to produce in-house or to what extent it wants to outsource, which is generally known as make or buy decision. In further portion of the chapter, we'll be seeing it in detail. Means if I am a manufacturer, first of all what I need to decide before process selection, that how much, if suppose my product is product Z, for this product Z I may require 5 different components. Now out of these 5 components, how many am I going to produce by myself, or how many things I am going to outsource it. Outsource it means get it from somewhere. So basically I have to decide on make or buy decision, whether I'll make the whole some 5 products or subcomponents within my unit, or I may be outsourcing it. So that is make or buy decision. Number 2 comes up is how much the company wishes to invest in the equipment and labor. That means whether the company is capital intensive or it is labor intensive. More it wants to invest on machines, or whether it wants to select such a way through which through the labor it wants to produce. So it depends. So that is the second important thing it needs to consider. The third question what they need to answer is the degree to which the system could be adjusted to changes in the volume or design of the product. That means how much process flexibility they want, right? How much they want that the process or maybe the system should adjust the volume. Suppose initially my unit may be having the demand of 200 units at the end of the month, then do I have such with this process selection, do I have that much capacity to produce 200 units? Supposingly if it increases in the next month to 300 units, does my process give me this flexibility to make the changes? This has to be decided before making the process selection, because process selection is like selecting the location or maybe the layout. Once you select, you can't change it every now and then, right? Once you start preparing the product Z with one kind of process, and then in the midway you realize that no, this is not the right way to produce, and then you switch over to some other process. Something like this can only happen on paper. Practically this is not possible, and it's almost impossible to change the way of producing something every now and then. So beforehand the manufacturer needs to decide that what type of volume it needs, what type of process it needs, what type of adjustment it will require, and accordingly he can make the decision on process selection. Next, fourth point is how many variety of products or services will the system need to handle. That means what type of products, how many types of products or how many varieties of product it needs, that it has to decide. How many types of services it wants to render, it has to decide first, and then it can handle the whole process selection. Suppose at a time if I select such a kind of process which gives only 2 outputs at a time, but the demand for the product are maybe 4 at a time, then I have to select such a way through which I can satisfy whatever the varieties of the products or services that may be required to handle. The next and the last one is, what is the expected volume of output? That means the output has to be decided beforehand. At least tentative outputs has to be decided, that these many product we may require, these many number of things we may require to produce at the end, and then the process have to be selected. Means if it is a bulk production, likewise decision has to be taken whether you are going for the customized product or maybe job shop, then the things would change accordingly. So depending upon so many types of factors, the manufacturer needs to decide as to what type of process will be best for him. Thus, the objective of any organization while process selection is to build a production process that meets the customer's requirements at least possible cost and with minimum difficulty. Very, very important. Ultimate objective of any process selection is what? That we have to produce such a kind of product which are providing the customer satisfaction on one hand, that means it meets the customer requirements. Again, it's not costly affair on the part of manufacturer, that means at the least possible cost it is being manufactured, and it is manufactured with the minimum hurdles and difficulties, means with the minimum efforts or with the minimum difficulties on the way of production. That kind of process has to be decided by the manufacturer. Thus, if you are meeting this objective, or if your process is meeting these objectives, then we can say that that is the best alternative process selection for us, or that is the best alternative process for us, and accordingly the selection is being made. That means what we have checked up till now is that in this particular section of your syllabus, we are trying to deal ultimately with the process selection. That means once the person decides whether I want to produce the product or whether I want to render the services, the next important decision on the part of manufacturer is to select the location, right, the place wherein he can set up his manufacturing unit. The third one is he has to select the layout. Layout and process selection almost goes hand in hand, because once you decide the process selection, and then you can design the whole layout there, that okay, if this selection I am going to produce from the available alternatives A, B, C, D, I am going to produce with the process of C, then accordingly the layout can be set and the product can be produced, manufactured, and then it can be marketed, through which the profit can be earned. So it is very crucial decision on the part of manufacturer, and thus has to consider so many aspects. So in today's lecture, what we have seen is, we have seen with the key decisional areas of the process selection, right? We have seen the two aspects, that is the process planning and process selection, that the process continues. We have already seen the types of processes, right? That basically there are three types of processes. It is say number one, conversion process, number two, manufacturing process, and number three, testing process. So basically any kind of production you may be doing, it falls in one of the three categories. That is why we have checked it out. So it can be known as functions also, and we can call it the categories of process also. And at the end we have seen two aspects, process planning, process selection. Process planning can be further divided into two aspects, that is process design, wider term, operation design, stage wise, right, which tells us about the man-machine relationship. And process decision is as I told you, it's a wider term, right? Process selection means which method you want to use, how you want to produce, and at that time key decisions are taken up depending upon these five different questions or five different aspects that any manufacturer has to keep it in mind. All right, so that's the end of the lecture today, right? When we meet next, we shall be again checking out further with the next aspect, important aspect of process selection. So we have ended up with process selection part 2. By the time we meet next, it's a goodbye from my side. Take care of yourselves. Thank you.